You know, my dear nerds, I am willing to bet that you love having hands. Having hands is non-ironically pretty freaking awesome. And by the way, if you don't have hands, I'm so sorry for this opener. But these things, let's admit it, they are utilitarian as all heck. They are exactly what we need to do things. We can pick things up, we can carry things around, we can open doors for our imaginary partners, we can play with... Get your mind out of the gutter, I'm talking about handhelds. Point is, evolution and biology gave us the ultimate utilitarian tool, but I actually started thinking, what actually are hands? The answer to this question seems rather simple, doesn't it? Well, basically hands are an interaction medium. We use them as tools to interact with the world outside of our brains, outside of our normal freaking brains. And to most extent, this actually allows us to, do a lot of things that we normally couldn't. Look at those stupid T-Rexes from the past. They had very short, stumpy hands. They couldn't do things that we do, like painting and sitting on the couch and wasting our potential. But anyway, I actually want to talk about the controller. Because you see, my dear nerds, controllers are hands for our computers, because they are also an interaction medium, just like our normal hands. God, this was such a bad opener. Please don't unsubscribe. In any case, I actually like this controller. This is the EasySMX X20, and it's quite a pretty complex controller. In fact, I would say that it's one of the most feature-rich freaking controllers that ever borrowed their design language from the original Xbox controller. You remember the Xbox, right? It's this freaking thing right here. This Xbox controller, well, not specifically this one, but the Xbox controller, basically opened the Pandora's box for a million other manufacturers to make their variants. And all of them try to improve in different ways. Some fail horribly, some actually might succeed. But this EasySMX X20, well, let me tell you, my dear nerds, this was one heck of a ride. You see, in the latest videos, I made my thoughts clear about RGB. I don't like RGB on cheap Linux-based handhelds like the Anbernic RG40XXH. I genuinely think that some devices aren't really compatible with RGB. RGB, to my silly head at least, implies modernity. It implies modern gaming. And when it came to small Linux handhelds, RGB had no place there. But you know where RGB has a place? On a freaking modern controller. That's where they should put all the RGB, which they did. Just look at this thing. It has RGB on the sides, RGB on the sticks, RGB on the logo, which I'm not really a fan of, but oh well. And most importantly, RGB on the buttons right here. But these buttons and the RGB in them is actually kind of cool because it gives this weird spatial effect. So anyway, before I go on, my dear nerds, I just want to quickly say that this specific EasySMX X20 controller was provided to me by the good guys at EasySMX. But it's also very important to know that no money exchanged hands. There was no editorial input, there was nothing that wouldn't make this an independent review. If this controller would suck, I would be the first one to say it. So sit back, relax, my dear nerd, and let's go to the table, that table right there, and let's explore this freaking thing. First off, look at this freaking box. This is what I wanted to show you. You know, not a lot of products that come into my hands have a decent looking box. And I don't know, maybe it's because it's black, or is it black? Dark gray. But for some reason or another, when I saw this box, I was like, oh my god, this will actually be a good product. But wait for it, my dear nerd. The box looks nice, right? You're like, oh my god, look, high quality design and patterns, I am easily impressed, just like Vlad Nerd. But then you open it up, and then this monstrous, cheap transparent plastic mold is the first thing that you see. And you're like, what the heck? But, you know, thankfully, you don't do anything with this plastic mold. This is the first thing that we throw. But this reminds me, I don't know how many of you have this point of reference, but this reminds me of old cheap bazaar toys, which you happened to probably stumble upon in the 90s. I mean, at least in Eastern Europe, bazaars had a lot of very, very cheap, very plasticky toys, you know, and this is in the same vein of plastic as those toys. Anyway, moving on, because the plastic thing doesn't matter, it's the controller that matters, and this, let me just turn it on. This is an absolute beauty. The Xbox controller is technically the benchmark that all of these, for lack of a better term, copycat controllers try to imitate. But I'm too quick with this. We're gonna put these aside for a second because we're not done here. We have another plastic monstrosity with a wireless receiver, but I'll get back on the connectivity of this controller in quite a bit. Quite a decent USB cable, I would say here. There's a manual, but I would genuinely recommend reading this manual. Usually I make fun of manuals like these, but this actually contains a lot of key combinations that you need in order to use this controller to its fullest potential. Anyway, just a second. So, let's talk a bit about this little controller. To start off, we have Hall effect sticks and Hall effect triggers. You don't have any fear of stick drift, which with the normal Xbox controller, this was always a fear. If you had one of these controllers sticking in the backpack and the stick was like this, then you could have said bye-bye to that controller. Things like normal sticks, eventually they tend to drift. Historically though, I never actually worried about this, and I don't intend on ever worrying if a stick is not Hall sensor, but it's good to have that peace of mind, I guess. A lot of people just don't want to worry if they just throw this freaking thing, or more rather this freaking thing inside a backpack. They just want to know that it survives and that all is well and all is fancy and they have nothing to worry about and they didn't break their precious controller. The Xbox has normal membrane buttons. These ones, I'm pretty sure, are micro switch. The sound and feel of this controller is totally different compared to a normal Xbox one, whereas here we have normal membrane buttons. Here we have very clicky buttons. In fact, I'm not sure if you can hear. You know, personally, I was never a fan of this micro switch kind of sound, but it's growing on me. Apparently it's pretty big in Asia. Who the heck knew that this was a thing? And this applies to the D-pad as well. Again, it's very crunchy. Do you hear the freaking crunchiness? But I actually grew to like that. I don't have a problem with how the buttons sound. In fact, I would say that this adds a charm to it. And by the way, you can totally switch this RGB off. You don't have to be freaking tortured by it. Well, I think I am a bit tortured by it because I am an old person. You see, my dear nerd, and as an old person, on a controller, you know, I'm an open-minded kind of nerd. I accept RGB on a controller, but after 15 minutes, I started to worry. I started to think about battery life, about why do I need this? You know, I have my hands right on the horns. How do I enjoy this? Is this not waste of the battery? But thankfully, the battery is kind of a non-issue here because it has a rechargeable internal battery, which you get to recharge via USB-C, meaning that you know, you get to play wirelessly if you want. You get to use this mostly wireless, and when you have a low battery, you just plug it into a USB cable like the one that they provided, and you play it wired for a while. And you also take advantage of things like low latency and blah blah blah. You know, it's a wired connection. I don't need to tell you the benefits. Basically, it acts as if you continue from a wireless connection to a wired connection. And this kind of eliminates, at least for me, a lot of battery anxiety. But you also get to control the modes in which you want to use this controller through this slider right here. So the first one is for the USB dongle, the one that I showed you. Then the middle one is for the Bluetooth, and the other one is for Nintendo Switch, because this is also compatible with the Switch. Now, I don't know why they needed a separate toggle for the Switch. They could have realistically just used the key combination, a button combination, and just have put that in the manual. But hey, I'm not really complaining. I mean, I kind of am. This is my style, accept me. But yeah, in case you have a Switch, you can use that on this, you can use it on Android, you can use it on PC, you can use it on everything your freaking heart desires. And I almost forgot, you have 4 programmable buttons on the back, 1, 2, 3, 4, and these 2 particularly, they are very easy to reach when you hold the controller. But the main thing about this controller is that not only does it have analog triggers, but you also get to slide this button or this button, because this affects each subsequent trigger, to turn them into a digital freaking trigger. And this is actually good for a lot of use cases. This is good for emulation. There's a lot of games out there which don't really require an analog trigger, or don't require a trigger at all, and you can use the triggers in that case, and by the way, they are clicky when they are in digital trigger mode. You can use them for hotkeys, for quick saves, for rewind, for don't use rewind, that's like the worst kind of cheating when you play retro games, my dear nerds. My point is that you have way more liberty here, you have way more freaking power to customize than you could ever have hoped from an Xbox controller. You know, this does the job, I'm not gonna bullpoop you, this is good. I hate the fact that I have to go through disposable batteries all the time, or I can buy rechargeable normal ones, but there's always the hassle. I have to take them out, even if they are rechargeable, I have to charge them, I have to check how much charge they have, I have to put them back. I'm a comfy nerd, my dear nerds, I don't want to do all of that. I appreciate an included battery in controllers like these. I appreciate it now, don't ask me in 5 years when I know that it would technically need to be replaced, that's when I'll eat my words. But currently, since the controller is new, I freaking love the convenience that comes with an included internal battery like this. I connected it to my phone real quick so that we can test the sticks, and they actually feel as if I have the full spectrum of motion, which, you know, is amazing. And I can hit diagonals. This doesn't seem to be a problem in any way whatsoever. Everything seems to work just right. Let me switch to the digital sticks and you see how they work now. What I don't like about this controller, my dear nerds, is that they have these 2 shortcut buttons, these hotkeys button. You use this one in combination with other things like the sticks to toggle the light and all of the other things that are related to this controller. And this other one right here is the turbo button. But my question to EasySMX is, why did you put them below and not on top? Why didn't you take the start and select button from here and put them downwards and then put these hotkey buttons on top? It's basic freaking ergonomics, EasySMX. No, I don't want to be hard on the company, they actually did an amazing controller here. But for the life of me, my hands would naturally reach these. And to reach this one, for example, I have to go all the way over the stick. Because otherwise, well, wait, this one. Because otherwise, I accidentally hit the stick. You see, I don't have massive fingers to leapfrog over the stick. So if they had put the start and select here and these hotkey buttons here, I think everyone would just enjoy the controller a bit more. And last but not least, I am a person that loves his gadgets in pure black. Simplistic black, you know? I am not ashamed to say that You know, once you go black when it comes to your handheld and gadget preferences, you never freaking go back. So, I would never ever dare making a review video about the controller without testing some freaking PC games and retro games to see how this behaves. I kind of turned down a few lights so that the phone doesn't get blown up by my very bad freaking camera that I have here. So I hope you make do with the video quality, but I don't feel any freaking lag in this whatsoever. I mean, I'm sure there's a bit because it's a Bluetooth connection, but I can actually say I would enjoy playing games like this. I don't see why I wouldn't be able to. In fact, when it comes to these two, now this is my, new favorite controller. It surpasses a normal Xbox controller in basically every way. And of course, this goes without saying, but you can also use it for retro games as well. There would be absolutely no problem with this. I'm not gonna show you anything from the company that shall not be named and we should all dislike for wanting to take down our king. Yeah, there's no reason why you can't use this for retro games either. But this would work way better if you had a setup box or if you connected, your console to a TV. Somebody in the comments told me once, Vlad, why do you keep showing Legacy of Kain? Do you not know any other games? And to that person, all I have to say is, you're right, I should show more diversity when it comes to the games, but I don't want to. This game is a freaking legend. This whole series is a freaking legend of games. If you haven't played, in fact, controller aside, if you haven't played the Legacy of Kain games, what are you doing with your life? My nerd, you need to play these things no matter how busy your life is. This needs to be your top priority moving forward. So yeah, Legacy of Kain. All of the games work. This controller acts as an Xbox controller. It connects via X input, so everything would work out of the box, from vibration motors, which this one has by the way, to everything that you can imagine. Now, honestly, this isn't really that different from an Xbox controller. How you need to imagine this is that this is what this is, just with way more features. Plus, the thing about this controller is that it isn't even expensive, my dear nerds. You can get it for around 50 bucks. For that kind of money, you can't really go wrong. And I would actually recommend this way more than the original Xbox controller. This is not even a point of comparison. This just simply has so many more features that it's bananas. And don't get me wrong, I'm not shilling for EasySMX. I know I praised this controller a lot, and there's very few things that I don't like about it. I would have loved the black color, I would have loved for them not to highlight their freaking logo with backlight, and I would have loved for these buttons to be reversed when it comes to placement. And EasySMX also releases controllers that, in my opinion, aren't so good. I'm gonna make a video review of the EasySMX M05 pretty soon down the line, I hope. I wasn't impressed by that controller. That controller was, I don't want to give spoilers, but you can tell off my body language, it wasn't nearly the best. But this, hands down, this is a good controller. I'm not saying you should buy it if you don't need one. If you have an Xbox controller and you're perfectly satisfied with it, don't upgrade because you don't need to. But if you're in the market for a controller, by golly, this is one heck of a pretty awesome option. So anyway, my dear nerds, let me know what you think. Personally, I love this controller way more than I thought I would. Granted, I don't think I'm the target audience with all of this freaking RGB on it, but you know what I like? Look at these buttons right here. Do you see the... Oh, come on, camera. Do you see the depth effect? It's like the lettering is way deep inside. I'm gonna put some B-roll with this so you see it better. But anyway, now it's your turn. Tell me what you think of this controller. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you think this should be thrown in the garbage? Do you think it should be put on a controller pedestal? I think this might be a contender for a controller pedestal. But at the end of the day, I also want to emphasize, that if you have a normal Xbox Series S/X controller, or heck, even a Xbox One S controller, all of a sudden upgrading to this becomes optional. This is still good. This is borderline luxurious in many ways, but it's not mandatory, if this makes any sense. As in, you can survive with a car that doesn't have extra options, just like you can survive with a standard controller that doesn't have any of those fancy extra options as well. So tell me what you think of this controller. Tell me if you like this, I know, a bit less edited type of video. Would you still watch it? Would you not watch it? If you like it, I can push out way more of these compared to my usual content. So a bit of feedback here if you're still 36 minutes in or 30 minutes in after I edit it, then, you might as well give me some feedback on this. But anyway, my dear nerd, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you can, and only if you can, please consider supporting me directly. You can do this by either becoming a channel member or a Patreon, and if you do, you will be represented on my wall of fame in each and every video that I make. You'll get to be here alongside awesome people like Tech Dweeb, Joy from Joy's Retro Handhelds, and Ras from Retro Game Corp. I recently learned that it's not Retro Game Corps, even though it has an S at the end. I know, maybe it's my non-native English, but I always thought it was Retro Game Corps. That's how I always said Ras's channel name. If that was wrong, Ras, I'm sorry, man. It wasn't intentional. But anyway, my beautiful nerds, this is it from me. I just want to quickly and kindly remind you that I love you. I love you with all my... My brain is malfunctioning from the lack of sleep. Yeah, I think I sound like Churchill. I love you with all my heart. We must save the queen. Blah, 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 blah. What am I doing, actually? What am I doing with my life? It's 4 a.m. I'm 34 years old. I'm imitating a very bad Churchill. Ugh. Anyway, my dear nerds, I love you very much. This is what I wanted to say. Take care, and we'll see each other in the next video.